For Complex News, I'm Hanuman Welch, and E3 2019 is done and dusted, with Microsoft, Ubisoft, EA, and Nintendo all dropping trailers and release dates for their next slate of upcoming titles. The biggest annual gaming expo has shut its doors for another 12 months, and Complex is diving deep on just some of our favorite reveals from this year's event. Sony actually decided to sit E3 out this year to focus on alternative routes directly to their core consumer base. Quote, "As the industry evolves, Sony Interactive Entertainment continues to look for inventive opportunities to engage the community. PlayStation fans mean the world to us, and we always want to innovate, think differently, and experiment with new ways to delight gamers. As a result, we have decided not to participate in E3 in 2019. We are exploring new and familiar ways to engage our community in 2019 and can't wait to share our plans with you." Now, even without Sony's presence or any mention of first-party titles or potential mention of their next console, there were plenty of reveals for fans of all stripes to be excited about. Here's what pinged on our radar hardest coming off this year's expo. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Now, the minds behind the Titanfall franchise are back with a new Star Wars game. Jedi Fallen Order will cover a fascinating, violent part of the Star Wars history, the period immediately following Revenge of the Sith at Episode 3, when Emperor Palpatine commanded the clone army to execute Order 66. You play as a Jedi Padawan who escaped the initial massacre, but are pulled back into the conflict as the Empire continues to grow in power. The title, which showed off some impressive wall running, platforming, force powers, and combat, drops November 15th, 2019. But Fallen Order was just one of the titles worth mentioning coming in 2019. Most games people were looking forward to don't drop until 2020. Now, Cyberpunk 2077, a title we fully expected not to arrive this year, has been confirmed for a release early next year. Thanks to an appearance from Keanu Reeves, revealing the release date is April 16th, 2020. Keanu also shared that he'll have a role in the upcoming title. Fans got their closest look yet at CD Projekt's next massive open-world RPG. Of course, we've seen the menus, the upgrade systems, shop inventories, dialogue options, varying approaches to solving problems, and Cyberpunk 2077 feels like Deus Ex with a Game of Thrones-sized budget. The demo was brief and not exactly the most revealing thing in the world, but the art direction is staggering in detail. Now, this was CD Projekt reminding the world that it has made a very, very large role-playing game that looks gorgeous, stars Keanu Reeves, and isn't coming out anytime soon, but remains one of the most anticipated titles of the next 12 months. And keeping things fully in 2020, Microsoft unveiled both a new console and a new Halo title, both heading for a holiday 2020 release. Project Scarlett, as the new Xbox console has been dubbed, is 4 times more powerful than its predecessor, the Xbox One. Now, the holiday 2020 launch of Project Scarlett will also be coupled with the release of Halo Infinite. Being referred to as a spiritual reboot of the series, Chris Lee, studio head of first-person shooter game development, told The Verge, quote, "This story will mark the beginning of a new chapter and challenge for the Chief, but it will also respect and continue threads that led to this point. If you've never played a Halo game before, this will be a great place to jump into the story." Call of Duty Infinite Warfare studio Infinity Ward is leading development of this year's Call of Duty. Last year's entry, Call of Duty Black Ops 4, was a deviation from the military shooter franchise in that it featured no single-player campaign and added a battle royale mode, just like everybody else seems to be doing these days, called Blackout to the multiplayer options. The game, slated for an October 25th release, will be a more grounded and gritty reboot of the Modern Warfare franchise. Now, if you've ever played a modern Call of Duty game, you know that slow-motion, quick-time event-style shooting challenges have always been a part of the franchise for a very long time. But Call of Duty Modern Warfare is doing away with that entirely, and doubling down on ultra-realistic ballistic physics, and for the first time ever, giving players analog doors that they can crack open and peek through before engaging in a gunfight. You already know what it is. Call of Duty works, it drops annually, and will promptly make $1 billion overnight following its release. Google's streaming video game service Stadia made a massive impression. The tech giant streaming service will launch in 14 countries this November, and Google announces that a first-party game studio led by Jade Raymond will also launch with Doom Eternal. Doom Eternal is the first major game announced, with Baldur's Gate 3 and Destiny 2 both coming to Google Stadia, and Google is the first company to try to truly disrupt the gaming business in some time. And Stadia could be a threat to everyone from the companies that create and sell consoles to online storefronts like Steam. It's hard to wrap your head around all the ways this system could actually change the way we interact and play our games, and judging by the hands-on demos we saw, Google has done their homework in terms of both hardware and software. I mean, if you think about it, Google already has the infrastructure in place as essentially the largest internet search engine and technology company on the planet. For them to offer a streaming gaming service without a console will be a game changer for the entire industry. And finally, Nintendo smashed it out of the park during this year's Expo. First up, a direct sequel to the near-perfect Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is currently in development. Now, not much is known about the upcoming Zelda installment, though the trailer features Link traversing a dungeon alongside a redesigned Princess Zelda, as the two encounter an unknown threat. Now, the news is especially surprising considering that the fact that the canon games in the franchise don't usually receive direct sequels. Fans of the 90s series Banjo and Kazooie have been anticipating the titular characters to make their Super Smash Bros. Debut, and Nintendo has finally answered their prayers. The hero from Dragon Quest will also be added to the game as well. Daemon Ex Machina, Nintendo's recently announced IP, will also be available September 13th later this year. The video game giant also announced No More Heroes 3 is currently in development alongside Breath of the Wild 2. Other titles coming to the Switch in the inevitable future are Witcher 3, Alien Isolation, Resident Evil 5 and 6, and Dauntless were also announced alongside the massively anticipated Luigi's Mansion 3.
Hello? Mario.
Luigi's invited to a gorgeous hotel with Mario, Peach, and the others. Oh, lucky him.
Now, those were just some of our highlights from this year's Expo. Let us know what your highlights were in the comments below, and for everything else, subscribe to Complex on YouTube. For Complex News, I'm Hanuman Welch.